Wow, so much stuff I have for today. We got plenty of time, so I'm not going to keep you over, but boy, what a lot is going on right now. First of all, as you may have noticed, I'm not wearing the collar today, as I have been doing since I got back from overseas. I actually picked up this T-shirt last night at the Pride Parade, and yeah, and I thought it would be appropriate to wear it in honor of Pride Week. I don't know if any of you saw on social media the video of us at the parade, but it was really electric. And I'm still kind of speechless about the experience. We ended up having 22 people march with us as a group, but there were hundreds of people marching and thousands of people along the streets, and it was all love, every bit of it. It was just an amazing experience. At one point, Jeff Knight, who I think is downstairs with the kids today, he was helping. We were carrying a banner, and he turned and looked at me and said, "I have never had this many people applaud for me in my life." And it's interesting. Applause, according to Desmond Morris, who's the guy that wrote The Naked Ape and Intimate Behavior, if you've ever heard of those. According to Desmond Morris, applause is a long-distance hug. That the action of a hug is going like this, and if your arms are empty, your hands come together. And that behaviorally, what applause is like it's being hugged by people at a distance, right? And so being hugged by one person's great, and being hugged by 100 people, is really awesome. And if you get hugged by like 1,000, it's overwhelming. It is enough to bring tears to your eyes. I remember my first experience in a leading role on stage. I was a junior in high school, and the performance we did for the students, we had a 1,200-seat theater, and it was packed because everybody wanted to get out of class. And I had the lead in that play, and I got a standing screaming ovation from 1,200 of my classmates, and I still get a little verklempt thinking about it. It was life-changing. It was what kind of led me to major in theater. The feeling was unbelievable. So that feeling of so much love pressing in on us, from both sides of the street all the way, down the route of the parade was truly amazing. We were, in addition to yelling Happy Pride, people were just yelling, "We love you" to us, and we were yelling, "We love you" back to them. And it was something. If you weren't here last week, we rolled out our new vision and our new mission. And the mission of Unity of Birmingham is now healing the world through radical love. And if you ever want to see what radical love looks like, if that's ever a question in your mind, go to a Pride Parade. And that will take care of it for you, because that was some radical love on display last night. Amen. And one thing I would like to do is, for everyone who was there with us last night, if you would stand, I'd like to honor you and thank you for showing up and being part of what we did. So thank you very much. Yeah. So we're getting out in the community and letting people know we love them, and that's really what that was all about. I know some people get a little concerned with my politics, but this was really about letting an underserved community know that they are loved, and that's really what we were there to do. And it was great. We were actually in line with about 3 other churches. We had the Covenant UCC Church had this big trailer with a band and a choir and all this stuff in it. And then the Pilgrim UCC Church was marching right in front of us, and a couple of groups behind us, the Beloved Community Church was marching as well. So it was nice to let everybody know that not only does the faith community in Birmingham offer you some love, but we offer you some choices too. So if you don't like one, you can try another. Speaking of Beloved Community, next week Jennifer Sanders, the minister at Beloved Community, is going to be here subbing for me. I'm going to be in Wyoming helping my new father-in-law celebrate his 70th birthday. So we're going to have Reverend Jennifer, and she is a wonderful, wonderful human being, minister, and speaker. So I hope you will all come back and hear what Jennifer has to say. And bring your dad, right, if he's around. So where we are at, we're currently going through one of the classic Unity works, which is called Lessons in Truth. And it began as a series of articles in Unity magazine back around the turn of the last century. It was actually became the first book that Unity published. They took that series of articles and combined them into the book that we know of as Lessons in Truth. And it lays out in pretty good detail sort of the foundation of Unity's take on New Thought. And, New Thought is the branch of spiritual traditions, religions, whatever you prefer to call them, that Unity's part of. And the idea behind New Thought, one of the primary ideas behind New Thought, is that we are all one with God, that God is all one, and that like God, since we're part of God, we help create the reality that we see all around us. And there are some different variations of that, but that's kind of the idea. Well, Dr. Emily Cady, lays out in detail for us and has a whole lot of biblical underpinning to her explanations. And some of it may read a little bit, like it's kind of old-timey language. So if you actually are reading the book with us, or if you go out and download it, read it online, you can listen to it online. It may sound a little bit dated, but there's still some great ideas in there that either we can take whole or we can sort of fit to what we're doing today. So we're on the 4th chapter, which is denials. And as she points out, denials are a part of almost every spiritual tradition out there. Now, in the Christian tradition, it seems that a lot of our take on denials comes from the book of Matthew, where it says, "Then said Jesus unto his disciples, If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." So there's a lot of ways that people interpret the Bible, right? Some people take it they take it extremely literally, and they want to take it as an extremely factual, literal, Word of God kind of thing all the way through. In Unity, we tend to interpret the Bible metaphysically, metaphorically, allegorically, even parabolically. In other words, as a parable, the kind of stories that Jesus used to tell. But in that particular verse, where he talks about denying ourselves, what some people have done with that is they have taken and said, well, then I need to deny myself anything that feels good or fun, right? And they've decided, well, we shouldn't have this particular kind of food, or we shouldn't have this particular kind of food on this particular day of the week, or we shouldn't have intimate relations, or we shouldn't do all kinds of different things that, all sorts of various thou shalt nots. It's interesting that there are a lot of people that think that denial makes them holier, right? If I don't do any of that stuff, then I am holier and probably holier than thou. It's been taken to some real extremes. There was actually a group back during the bubonic plague back in Europe in the 14th century called the flagellants. And what they would for them, denying themselves wasn't enough. They would beat on themselves. They would actually scourge themselves, is the word. They would take these whips and whip on themselves as they were chanting religious chants. One of the main reasons was they thought that would keep them from getting the plague and dying, because they thought God would love them and would protect them if they were harming themselves. Yeah, right? So there are a lot of people who have taken this whole idea of self-denial to some pretty serious extremes. But as Dr. Cady says, she thinks, and I agree with her, that that's probably about as far away from what Jesus was talking about as we can get. You see, what we are kind of wired to do is, at least wired while we live in these things, right? Not our Christ self, but our ego self, our sense consciousness self. We tend to be wired to look for happiness, joy, good, whatever on the outside. All right? So what we do is we take in information from the outside and we allow that to shape our inner world rather than looking for the truth within and then using that to shape the world around us. And that is, in a nutshell, I could stop right there. That in a nutshell is New Thought. Rather than allowing the world to happen to us, we co-create a world that happens through us. Amen? All right? So, what denial essentially is not saying, I can't have this thing that I enjoy. Okay? Now, it is possible to get lost in things that we enjoy. I am certainly an absolute example of that, right? Whether, we could be alcoholics, drug addicts, sex addicts, shopping addicts, speed junkies, people that are like into fast cars, fast skiing, adrenaline junkie type people. There are all kinds of ways of finding fun out there that we can get lost in. That's not good either. But we come to rely on our senses, and what we are unable to do is distinguish when they're not telling us the truth, or when they are showing us something that doesn't really represent the truth. We're all familiar with what the word illusion means, right? And what we don't understand is that much of what we see around us is an illusion. Now, that doesn't mean that these things, I can't reach out and touch them, right? But it is the meaning that I assign to those things that can be illusory. And what is especially dangerous, and what happens to us all the time, is when we assign meaning to other people and to other people's intentions and to other people's feelings and to how they affect us. Those things can eat our lunch to the point where we don't feel like it's worthwhile being around anymore. And they're largely illusion. They're not the truth. They're not the truth of who we are or what we are. So when we talk about denial, and I think this is a pretty good definition, and this was one of the old Webster definitions. To deny is to declare to be not true, to repudiate as utterly false. By denial, we mean declaring not to be true a thing that seems to be true. And there are examples all over the place. One I wanted to share with you was a doctor over at UAB. Her name is Letitia Ilopri, and she's a researcher in infectious diseases. She is the grandchild of sharecroppers. Her mother was her grandparents' 12th child. She didn't have indoor plumbing until she was in high school. Okay? So when Letitia was in first grade, she was not learning as fast or as well as the other kids in her class. And her teachers and some of the administrators at the school were, they kept trying to shove her into the slow learners, corner, and wanted to keep her from being challenged. And I guess, maybe keep their instructors from having to try to help her stay up. And her mother, who had grown up in extreme poverty and who had a really strong work ethic, said, no, she can do this, put her in it. And she instilled in Letitia that same idea of, what you're saying about me is not the truth of me. I can do this. I'm not stupid. I'm not slow. I'm not less than all the other kids who are around me. And she ended up going to Florida State on a full scholarship for her undergraduate degree in biology, and to the University of Florida to go to med school. And now she is, deeply into, working with infectious diseases, because she was willing to just say no to what those other people were telling her. There are so many times in our lives when we need to do that very same thing. I realized as I came up with the title for this talk that, I'm probably showing my age. There are probably a lot of people who don't know where the phrase "just say no" comes from. So for those of you who are younger than a certain age, our former First Lady, Nancy Reagan, had a campaign against drug abuse that was called "Just Say No." And it's funny, just side note, I remember when I got to grad school at Cal Arts, our dean, Libby Apple, when she gave her welcoming speech to the students, she riffed on that and said, "While you're here at Cal Arts, I want you to just say yes." If a film school student asks you to be in their video, just say yes. If a performance artist asks you to be in their piece of performance art, just say yes. If a student director asks you to be in their play, just say yes, right? And that was a great way of looking at life, especially if you were, at a highly experimental school, right? We got into all sorts of things. I had friends who were animators and friends who were film students, and it was a wonderful place to be. But sometimes before we can get to that place where we just say yes and we open up and we affirm, we have to clear out what's in there. It's the whole idea of putting new wine into new wineskins, right? And you certainly can't put wine into a wineskin that's full of vinegar. That's the whole idea of denial. By using denials, we sweep out a false belief that is not serving us, and we leave room to then affirm or say yes to those beliefs that are good, helpful, useful, healthy, and that can do us some good. It's interesting. Suicide has been in the news this week. The last time that I spoke about it from pulpit was the week after Robin Williams had taken his life. And this week we've had a couple other celebrity suicides that have sort of raised people's consciousness about that particular issue. And it has become an issue, certainly in America and maybe in some other places around the world. I think that in some ways it's kind of sad that it takes the death of a designer and a cook/world traveler to put some attention on this issue when, at last count, the last year that we have statistics for, we lost 7,400 veterans to suicide. That's about 20 a day. And in getting educated about what goes on in the LGBTQ community, I know that LGBTQ kids are far more likely to attempt suicide, especially if they are living in homes that are not supportive. There are several high-risk populations. Those two populations are certainly among them. And one of the things that it occurred to me as I was kind of being inundated with all of the things that have happened and all the things I was reading in order to prepare for today is that, those groups could certainly use some good denials, as could many of us, when we think, I'm not worthy, right? Which many of us do. We need to come up with a denial like, I am not unworthy. I am not useless. When we think that there is no sense in us being here, when we think that our loved ones would be better off without us, we need a denial. My loved ones would not be better off without me. Obviously, it helps if we have someone to reach out to. And if our ushers are here, I have a little something for everyone that I wanted to give you during the service. So if you have the cards that I have printed, would you go ahead and start handing those out? I know that most of us are probably, in a fairly decent place, right? Most of us aren't considering self-harm today. But you just never know. And you never know when you might come into contact with someone who could use some help. So what I'm having our ushers hand out right now is a card, and on that card are three things. My cell phone number, the number for Silent Unity, and the number for the National Suicide Hotline. I hope you will keep that. I'm not open 24 hours a day, but if you need me and you call me, I will be glad to talk to you. If you get my voicemail, I will return your call as soon as I can. All right? Silent Unity is the Silent Unity prayer service. They are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They are always there to pray with you or anyone else who needs a prayer. And the National Suicide Hotline is also open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you or someone you know is feeling like maybe your family and friends would be better off without you and you're having problems coming up with a denial of your own, I encourage you to encourage them to use that number and to seek help. There are some things that cannot be undone. And that is certainly one of them. And very often it is those illusions in the mind that lead people to that decision. And a very common illusion is that my friends, family, my loved ones would be better off without me. I'm not worthy of living. Those are certainly thoughts that we need to deny. Because each and every person is worthy. And having been in the aftermath of some suicides, I can honestly say I have yet to meet a family or group of friends who was better off. Of all the denials that I found when I was doing this research, the one that hit me the closest was from a veteran, a guy named Keith Hansford. He lives down in Pinellas Park, which is, oddly enough, one of the places that I had an Armed Services Reserve Center I used to report to. That was back when I was at the headquarters of the 53rd Infantry Brigade. Keith was in a really bad way when he came home. And he struggled with staying alive. So his wife would make him promise her before he left the house every day that he wouldn't kill himself or anyone else. Today, Keith has a tattoo on the back of his hand that says, "Not today." Not today. As someone who has lived life one day at a time for a long time, that really struck me. But what a powerful thing to be able to deny, just saying, not today. There are so many lies that we are exposed to. And I'm not just talking about things that are coming from the news or certain portions of the government. We're presented with appearances, and they're not real. In 12-step, we talk about fear a lot. And we talk about false events appearing real. It's one of the acronyms for fear. There's a couple others that I can't say in church. Begins with F. You can use your imagination. But looking out at this world outside, we are already affecting our thoughts about it. We are already making judgments just in the way we look at it. And when we lay our fears, our expectations, our apprehensions, all the things that have been shoved into us either consciously or unconsciously, it's very easy to think thoughts like, I'm not worthy, or I'm no good, or I can't do this, right? But the truth is, we can one day at a time. We can if we just say, not today. And it's a denial we can use even when those thoughts come in to haunt us. We can just say, you know what? I hear that inner voice, and you know what? Not today, you. You can use your own word there and be creative. Not today. You are not going to pull me down today. You are not going to ruin my life today. You are not the boss of me today. And let's just get through today. It's important, once we're done denying, to then fill that space with affirmations. And we're going to be talking about affirmations in 2 weeks when I get back from Wyoming. Have a wonderful Father's Day next week, and I will see you soon. Thank you.